If you have questions or suggestions for future podcasts, please submit them in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. The Church of Environmentalism. Hi, I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Economics is the study of the production and distribution of goods and services under scarcity. When applied to religion, we understand that people have to believe in something. Even the most ardent existentialist believes only in what exists. So here we are in the early part of the 21st century, and people are believing in new gods. As it says in Ecclesiastes 1:9, there's nothing new under the sun. Environmentalism is simply the latest god of some of our fellow humans. A God-shaped vacuum. A paraphrase of Blaise Pascal's work goes something like this. There's a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of every person which cannot be filled by any created thing, but only by God the Creator, made known through Jesus Christ, end quote. Now, I just read a new book by Marian Tupy and Gail Pooley from the Cato Institute titled Superabundance. Their point is that increasing world population increases resources. It does not reduce them. My summary of the increasing population concept is written in my little book, Economics and the Christian Worldview. And it is as follows. There's a limited amount of land and God isn't making any more. But He is making creative people who are finding more efficient ways of using it. Now back to the authors of Superabundance. They clearly state that they are writing from a secular worldview. So you can imagine my surprise to find a section titled, Is Environmentalism Becoming a Secular Religion? See, environmentalism fulfills the same psychological needs as religion does because it is transcendent. It allows humans to be a part of something greater than themselves. Michael Crichton, in a speech in San Francisco in 2003, said, Environmentalism is in fact a perfect 21st century remapping of traditional Judeo-Christian beliefs. There's an initial Eden, which is a paradise. Then there's a fall from grace into a state of pollution as a result of eating from the tree of knowledge. And as a result of our actions, there is a judgment day coming for all of us. Mr. Crichton continues to explain that we are all energy sinners, according to them, doomed to die unless we seek the salvation of sustainability in the Church of the Environment. Deidre McCloskey, in her 2010 book, Bourgeois Dignity, Why Economics Can't Explain the Modern World, says that environmentalism is taught now as a civic religion in American schools. The environmental left has now worshipfully adopted Malthus. In the absence of traditional religion, the need for the transcendent is being filled by something else, as Jason Josephson Storm wrote in his 2017 book titled The Myth of Disenchantment. He says religion has been replaced by New Age spirituality, paranormal beliefs, and pagan nature worship, which is environmentalism. Another guy, Michael Schellenberger, worked in various left-wing environmental movements, then wrote the book titled Apocalypse Never, Why Environmental Alarmism Hurts Us All. He says, religious traditions may be subconsciously shaping the foundational beliefs of environmentalism, thereby creating a new secular religion. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, human problems stem from our failure to adjust ourselves to God, while in the apocalyptic environmental tradition, human problems stem from our failure to adjust ourselves to nature, end quote. The creation or the creator? In the Epoch Times recently, titled The Green Ruse, Lee Smith writes, today's climate change movement portrays mankind as something like a parasitical alien sent to Earth for no other purpose than to violate the mistress Gaia. And in this perverse anti-human scenario, the remedy, which is renewable energy, degrades man and nature alike, end quote. He goes on to explain the economic viewpoint. He says that carbon emissions are a byproduct of energy consumption, which is a necessary part of eliminating global poverty. So the economic priorities are clear. Do we choose the environment or the people it was created to serve? Now, for Christians, the answer is pretty simple. People come first. When you reduce the use of fossil fuels in developing countries, the world's poorest and most vulnerable people are the ones who suffer. Belief over facts. Now, I recently read that electric cars will reduce global temperatures 0.0002 2 degrees. Hope I got the right number of zeros in there. Seems pretty insignificant, doesn't it? See, this is where economic thinking shows its value, because we say slowing global warming might be good, but at what cost? There's never been a one-armed economist, because we always say, on the other hand. And I made this point with more detail in podcast 136, titled Global Warming is Good. Bjorn Lomborg's article in the Wall Street Journal, titled How the Climate Elite Spread Misery, makes the following political observation. Politicians' singular focus on climate change ignores that people are much more worried about rampant inflation, especially rising food and energy prices, and climate policies are making those problems worse. Climate policies also increase energy prices by subsidizing renewables like solar and wind. That makes it even harder to adapt to the extreme temperatures that climate activists bemoan. You need cheap and reliable energy to afford air conditioning in the summer and heating in the winter." End quote. I explain my view in podcast 119, titled Demand, Destruction of God's Creation. Rising fuel prices are also making food more expensive. Low-cost synthetic fertilizer is one of the greatest technologies humanity has ever invented for feeding the world, but it's mostly made with natural gas. Even with almost 1 billion people at risk of starvation, climate-obsessed bureaucrats still object to producing more fertilizer because of the fossil fuels that are required to make it. Climate activists tell us that if we don't trade fossil fuel sources for green energy, the world will come to an end. However, observation of physical reality shows that the infrastructure needed for so-called clean energy is disastrous for the environment. The green agenda does not make economics sense. But then religion seldom does, because, see, it's based in belief, not in facts. As Ginger often says to me, there you go, thinking again. Environmentalism is all about feeling, with almost no consideration to thinking. Now, referring again to the book Superabundance, reason is needed to reveal the quasi-religious role that the belief in the coming of an environmental apocalypse plays in the lives of many well-meaning but increasingly unreasonable individuals. Evidence provides rational grounds for cautious optimism about the state of the planet. Sacrifices to the gods. Amidst a heat wave in California, officials are calling for less heat and cooling, less transportation, and shorter showers. We all have to make our sacrifices to the gods of the environment. Look, Californians pay an average about 29 cents per kilowatt hour in June for electricity, by far the most in the continental United States, and twice as much as in neighboring states. Look, personally, I still pay 10 cents in Texas because we have a competitive market for electricity. About every 2 years, I go to a website called Power to Choose. You can look it up if you want. And I select a provider who meets my needs. I pay 1/3 what Californians pay for the same thing because I purchase from a market and they purchase from a monopoly. But like all religions, environmentalism has its high priests. In the book Superabundance, Tupy and Pooley explain that in the new secular religion, the priesthood is played by scientists who interpret the natural order of things. Europe is about to enter the 21st century dark age this winter. See, a blind obedience to the Church of climate change is the reason. There can be no enlightenment until the curtain is pulled on the environmental wizards who act as high priests. Economic self-interest is at work in the climate change movement. Quoting Lee Smith and the Epoch Times again, the economic numbers give evidence that the transition to the Green New Deal is catastrophic for humans. So why are US and EU politicians determined to push Western civilization back into the Dark Ages? Because it's an extortion racket. There's big money at stake for global elites invested in the climate agenda, says Lee Smith. Eschatology. Environmentalists are committed to terrorizing people into believing that unless we agree to their demands to shrink our means while they expand theirs, the earth will burn to a fiery crisp. Lee Smith again. Climate change activism is fundamentally an end-of-times movement, and thus it attracts a fanatically committed constituency. They proselytize on behalf of the expert class and threaten violence against a humanity that they believe is worthy only of damnation, end quote. Whew, pretty strong stuff. But when they're trying to save the world, you got to get tough with people, huh? In his book titled Factfulness, Hans Rosling tells about turning down then Vice President Al Gore's pressure to scare people about the state of the environment. Good for Dr. Rosling for sticking to the facts. Greenpeace founder Patrick Moore has changed sides on the environmental debate and now serves on the board of the CO2 Coalition that advises us about the dangers of environmentalism. As Mr. Moore put it, climate change activists are primarily focused on creating narratives, stories that are designed to instill fear and guilt into the public so the public will send them money, end quote. Tupy and Pooley seem to agree in their previously mentioned book titled Superabundance. They state that rather than striving for a green utopia, the contemporary green movement has become obsessed with fear, predicting the end of the world by technology-induced climate change. The most watched of my 140 podcasts is number 88, titled Don't Fear the Future. As Tupy and Pooley point out in their book Superabundance, we have a negativity bias. We are attracted to bad news, but I encourage you not to believe it. My favorite question to ask in seminars, speeches, and classes is to complete the following sentence. Life was better on Earth before we ran out of. As far as I know, there's no answer. What should we fear? How about this? Fear God, tell the truth, earn a profit. I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. See you next time. For more information, please visit us online at davearnott.com. If you have questions or suggestions for future podcasts, please submit them online or in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.